And now we have Victreebel. Victreebel is one of the most menacing Gen 1 Pokemon, as it's based on the terrifying carnivorous pitcher plant. You know, the one that digests its prey alive in its mouth after catching it. Yeah, that one. Fans of the original Indigo League anime will fondly recall Weepin' Bell gobbling James up whenever he sent it out, and of course it kept doing it once it evolved too. Today we'll see if it was able to satisfy its appetite in the competitive scene. So, how good was Victreebel actually? And in this video, we'll be going over these competitive formats. Victreebel was a bit of a sleeper pick in Gen 1 OU, pardon the pun, but while it doesn't have the renown of Tauros, Snorlax, and Chansey, it was one of the most terrifying Pokemon in the metagame. It was so potentially lethal that it managed to get solid usage despite directly competing for a spot with fellow Sleep Powder using Grass type and RBY Big 4 constituent Exeggutor, who packed Explosion and resisted Psychic as opposed to Victreebel's weakness to it, and was able to switch into Rhydon's Earthquake multiple times, while Victreebel could only do it once, and would have its ability to take on Tauros severely hindered as a result. So why was it used? Well, Victreebel had several terrific offensive weapons. The most immediately apparent was its access to Wrap, which is famously one of the most annoying moves in Gen 1. Swords Dance powered its Wraps up and made them much more difficult to PP stall, which was the de facto method of dealing with the strategy for most teams. Though Victreebel could also cripple faster Pokemon, like with Sunspore, which of course increased the amount of Pokemon it could wrap, and was especially useful for ensuring opposing Tauros would be truly crippled if it tried to trade blows, as well as ensuring it wasn't helpless against Zapdos. Hyper Beam was also a solid option to finish off Pokemon like Exeggutor and Chansey that had been weakened by Wrap. With a base 70 speed stat, Victreebel was able to get the jump on much of the RBY metagame. This was also incredibly useful for getting the edge with Sleep Powder in situations where Exeggutor struggled, most notably opposing Exeggutor as well as Lapras. Victreebel also had an extremely powerful Razor Leaf, which scored an automatic critical hit 255 out of 256 times. It absolutely plowed through Starmie, meaning that a paralyzed Starmie would not be able to block Victreebel's sleep like it would be able to against most Exeggutor variants. Razor Leaf also made Victreebel the single best answer to the incredibly threatening Amnesia Slowbro, and was able to threaten resting Reflect Snorlax similarly to Exeggutor. For a long time, people viewed Victreebel as only to be used on full Wrap teams, alongside the unreliable Dragonite to cheese for wins. But it eventually established itself as a legitimate metagame threat that could be used on so-called quote-unquote real teams just as effectively. It preyed on many common metagame developments with ease. The power of Lead Alakazam and Starmie made Gengar a lot less common, which Victreebel liked almost as much as the fact that Lead Psychics would open every game by trading Thunder Wave on each other, thus removing one of the few Pokemon that would be able to outspeed it later. While Gen 1 Victreebel wasn't as defensively useful as the standard Exeggutor, it establishes itself as one of the most dangerous threats around and a true part of RBY OU. Now on to Gen 2. Victreebel took a lot of hits in Gen 2. Wrap was now a terrible move. Pokemon could wake up and attack on the same turn. Razor Leaf's critical hit rate went from 99.6% to 25%. Sleep Talk meant Sleep Powder wasn't essentially a KO. Steel types came into the picture, and its special stat was split into two, leaving Victreebel with a thoroughly meager base special defense stat of 60. Now, it wasn't all bad, as it got a powerful new Poison Stab and Sludge Bomb, which also bore a 30% poison chance. But it didn't stand much chance in OU. Its frailty held it back in the faster, more powerful metagame, where legendary electrics as well as threats like Gengar, Steelix, and Skarmory were on nearly every single team. However, Victreebel was a fearsome UU sweeper, with its standard set of Sleep Powder, Swords Dance, Sludge Bomb, and Giga Drain or Razor Leaf. It hit incredibly hard, naturally mowed through common walls like Blossom, and matched up decently against offensive Pokemon like Kabutops. Sleep Powder was always a good tool to shut something down, but it was especially fearsome coming from Victreebel because the two most common Rest Talkers, Slowking and Hypno, got absolutely eviscerated by a Swords Dance boosted Sludge Bomb, while not coming close to KOing Victreebel in return. Slowbro wasn't cleanly 2-hit KO'd like the other two were, but it still could be 37.5% of the time, and that was assuming the best case scenario, that it was coming in at full health. If spikes were up, it would almost definitely be 2-hit KO. KO'd. Victreebel Sludge Bomb on its own was a threat and a half, since it hit a ton of common offensive Pokemon like Scyther, Gyarados, and Electabuzz really hard. And that's not even mentioning the good odds of a poison on top of that. The tier's best Pokemon, Nidoqueen, ate Sludge Bombs up without fear of poison, but it really didn't want to eat a sleep powder. Victreebel wasn't without its flaws though. It was completely stuffed by the semi-common Restock Magneton, which absorbed sleep, was immune to Sludge Bomb, and shrugged off Grass Stab forever. It was also helpless against the even more occasional Crobat. However, these flaws were minor in the grand scheme of things, and were not anywhere near enough to prevent Victreebel from being a massive threat. Victreebel was absolutely one of the most dangerous Pokemon in GSC UU. Things just got nastier for Victreebel in Gen 3, as sleep duration was significantly shortened, and OU getting significantly stronger sent a ripple effect down to UU, meaning Pokemon like Nidoking joined old standbys like Scyther. The metagame generally increased in speed, with Pokemon like Ninetales and Sharpedo, as well as power, with the addition of Choice Band for Pokemon like Kabutops, meaning that it was quite difficult for Victreebel to even keep up or even switch in safely to begin with. Plus, Hypno even came equipped with the Insomnia ability now, meaning that it could completely block Victreebel's sleep powder. However, Victreebel was still a powerful Pokemon in its own right. Its stab Sludge Bombs were as difficult to safely switch into as ever, especially with Grass Stab mauling common resist in Amistar, Golem, and Quagsire, while something more resilient like Gligar absolutely hated being poisoned. Hypno blocking its sleep was admittedly incredibly annoying, but if it Swords Dance on the switch, it would still get plowed. Victreebel was also not completely without defensive utility. It was able to check Hitmonlee decently, and while it wasn't usually a chlorophyll abuser, since it preferred the immediacy of its greater attack stat and easier to use stab in Sludge Bomb to the setup requiring Solar Beam of its lower special attack, it was actually able to check opposing Sunny Day Vileplume looking to abuse the chlorophyll boost itself, thanks to its greater speed. So Victreebel definitely took a hit in Gen 3 UU, no doubt about that, and it wasn't as popular because it was tougher to fit on a team and make use of in battle. However, in the hands of an experienced trainer, it could still be quite a threat. While it was never going to break into OU, Victreebel got quite a number of excellent new tools. The new physical special split meant its Sludge Bomb no longer went off of its attack stat, but that was more than made up for by the fact that it could finally use physical Grass Stab. With the powerful Leaf Blade, it was looking scarier than ever, as actually being able to immediately threaten water types that didn't have a quadruple weakness was incredible. And speaking of new physical moves, it also got Sucker Punch, a powerful priority move. This was especially notable since it patched up Victreebel's problems with both its own low speed and opposing psychic types. It wasn't just blessed with new physical moves though. It received Weather Ball, meaning that it could now pose a legitimate threat as a chlorophyll sweeper, since instead of the weak hidden power Fire, it could use a move more powerful than Flamethrower for sun boosted coverage. Finally, the addition of Life Orb gave it a generally much needed power boost. Now, having said all of that, Victreebel couldn't cut it in UU at all. Why? Well, the chlorophyll set was always destined to fail, given how gimmicky Sunny Day teams were compared to their metagame defining Rain Dance counterparts. But even Swords Dance wasn't enough to carve out a niche, mainly because Venusaur existed, and was better in pretty much every way. It had Victreebel's special attack stat and HP, but a better speed stat, which allowed it to threaten more Pokemon, as well as also having significantly superior defense and special defense, allowing it to consistently switch into battle. Victreebel wasn't even better at Swords Dancing than Venusaur, despite higher attack stat, as Venusaur made up for it with stronger stab and power whip, as well as all-important coverage in Earthquake to destroy common checks like Registeel and Arcanine, Pokemon which shut Victreebel down completely. As such, Victreebel dropped to NU, but at least there, it was a cornerstone of Sun, one of the metagame's scariest playstyles, with a hyper-consistent setter in the terrific all-purpose tank Regirock, as well as plenty of Pokemon to abuse it. Victreebel blew past Charizard with Hidden Power Rock, was not stopped at all by the tier's foremost defensive stalwart, Slowking, and generally was a massive threat. It could easily sweep itself, or at least blow open a huge hole for its go-to partner Shiftry to take advantage of and finish the job. Overall, it took Victreebel a while to get going, but it eventually found its home in NU as one of the most important, dangerous parts of a tier-defining playstyle. Gen 5 was all about weather, and that included sun. And most players' go-to chlorophyll abuser was Venusaur, who once again seemed to edge Victreebel out. Both were incredibly scary with a boost from the buffed sun-powered growth, but Venusaur was preferred due to its superior bulk, making it tougher to bring down. However, it couldn't run both Hidden Power Fire and Hidden Power Ice, and thus always had crucial coverage issues, either coming up short against Steels or Dragons, neither of which was at all desirable. This was where Victreebel came in. Thanks to Weather Ball giving it fire coverage, seriously powerful fire coverage at that, it was free to run Hidden Power Ice, so it didn't need to make that crucial choice between hitting Ferrothorn and Dragonite. It was a fierce, legitimate choice on a competitive Sun team. That said, its frailty was significantly noticeable in comparison to Venusaur. It absolutely crumpled in the face of Scizzor's Bullet Punch and other priority, whereas Venusaur was generally able to shrug at least one of them off. And its Sludge Bomb, while not as automatic against the Dragons, was still quite strong, so with a bit of support, it could potentially still blow past them without having to give up Hidden Power Fire. Victreebel eventually faded in favor of Venusaur, but it made itself remembered as a threat. Now, while it was seen in OU semi-occasionally, Victreebel rocketed right down the tiering rung to land in NU once more. There, it reprised its niche from the previous generation. Sun teams were a little less meta than they were before, but they were still powerful, with the ever-reliable Regirock anchoring them, and Victreebel was their strongest abuser. It still ripped through the metagame easily, since common hit takers Alomomola, Golurk, Seismitoad, and Rotom Frost stood no chance. It didn't even need to run Hidden Power Ice, and could instead launch its brutal Sludge Bombs, which would absolutely plow key threats in Charizard and Ludicolo. It was even more effective now since it could either become incredibly powerful with growth, or just about permanently shut something down with Sleep Powder, taking advantage of the new crippling sleep mechanics. It wasn't used as much since its usage was mostly tied to Sun, which had gone down, but make no mistake, there was not a Gen 5 NU Sunny Day team that did not make use of the absolute beast that was Victreebel. When Gen 6 came around and introduced a host of crazy new toys, nobody was thinking about Victreebel, and rightly so. It's not like anyone listing off Pokemon likely to be good in OU is gonna go Heatran, Landorus T, Tyranitar, Latios, Victreebel. And the same logic applied in UU, RU, and for a time, even Victreebel's precious home of NU. It wound up in the new lowest tier, PU. However, it showed why that was a mistake, and quickly was banned for its overwhelming power that absolutely crushed the non-fully evolved late in metagame. Eventually, it re-established itself as an NU Sun staple alongside other Chlorophyllers, Shiftry, and Exeggutor. However, it still didn't see that much usage. No one doubted its power under the sun, that wasn't it. It was just that Sun teams were more of a niche pick than ever before, and certainly not the standard or nigh-standard choice they had been in the previous two generations. Since non-Sun Victreebel was a thoroughly unimpressive Pokemon, it followed that its usage was Sun usage, and when Sun usage was down, Victreebel was also down. Go figure. However, when it did show up, it was as fearsome as ever. It just had the opportunity to show up less and less as the stronger, bulkier metagame made for an environment harsher than ever to run Sun in. Now, just like in singles, Victreebel has a hard time differentiating itself from the more famous grass poison Venusaur in doubles. Chlorophyll may be easier to activate, but when push comes to shove, all Victreebel boasts over Venusaur is its impressive attack stat. It loses out in bulk and speed, and the two have equal special defenses. And when it comes to move pool, Victreebel struggles to set itself apart. Both have Sleep Powder if that's your kind of thing, and honestly, Venusaur might be the superior physical attacker even with its lower stats due to its access to Earthquake. However, it was via its admittingly limited move pool that Victreebel had its only even major VGC appearance. While it's hard scouring its list of moves to find something to differentiate itself, Terrence Dre was able to find two specific options that let him take Victreebel to a surprise 10th place at the UK Nationals in 2014, Encore and Weather Ball. It should probably come as no surprise that Terrence ran Victreebel alongside Mega Charizard Y, who brought the sun necessary to make Victreebel viable at all. Mega Charizard Y and Venusaur cores weren't an uncommon sight in VGC 2014. So what exactly did Terrence hope to get out of his Victreebel? Simple, Weather Ball. With a surprise base 100 power ball of flame in its back pocket, Victreebel could not only go up against and beat its fiercest competitor, it also gave him one-hit KO options on Bisharp and Mega Mawile. While that may seem curious given Charizard's disproportionate ability to melt steel types, having the surprise fastball meant that Terrence could keep Charizard safe in the face of Sucker Punch and have Victreebel Victreebel do the dirty work, leaving Charizard open to wreak more havoc. That wasn't the only unique aspect of Victreebel though. Encore was also an important part of the set. Due to its high speed, Victreebel could utilize Encore to abuse the common utility moves of VGC 2014, including Mega Kangaskhan's Fake Out, the Protect and Detects that were virtually on every set, and even Aegislash's King Shield, Wide Guard, or Substitute. With an opposing Pokemon locked into a useless move, Charizard was opened up even further, and Victreebel could chip on some nice damage alongside with Solar Beam. While Victreebel's base 100 special attack isn't the greatest in the world, Terrence shares an impressive piece of wisdom. Quote, if there's anything Talonflame has taught me this year, it's that base 120 stat moves deal big damage even when coming off of a base 81 attacking stat. So, one coming off of a base 100 attacking stat was good enough for me, end quote. The rest of Terrence's team was somewhat standard Sun Trick Room support. Wide Guard Aerodactyl, Trick Room Reuniclus, Guts Conkeldurr, and Intimidate Scrafty. But he still had some other cool tricks up his sleeve, such as Quick Guard on the Scrafty and Skill Swap on Reuniclus. Terrence only brought Victreebel as a lead alongside Charizard, and only if he knew that matchup would likely require its Weather Ball. He'd sometimes try to bring Victreebel to scare away fairy types, but it was an empty threat. Its last move was of course Protect, not the Sludge Bomb he'd need. Nevertheless, Terrence was able to win his first 7 rounds of Swiss before falling to Tyler Bakhtiari's Gardevoir, one of the few fairy types he feared, and won against Pedro Lima in top 32 before falling to Neil Crowlin's Hail Room backed up by Garchomp, just short of top 8. Still, 10th place isn't bad for your first tournament ever, whether you're Terrence or Victreebel. Victreebel may not have a lengthy resume, but its singular accolade is an impressive one. Gen 7 Victreebel found itself in PU again, though this time it stayed and established itself as an excellent Pokemon. And it wasn't dependent on Sun at all. It was a terrific attacker. It was very difficult to switch into Victreebel safely. What's more, it finally had defensive utility. Thanks to the lower power level of the PU meta, it was able to actually switch in pretty well, being able to check the ever-annoying Girder, as well as coming in nicely against Lurantis, Regirock, and the ever-popular Mudsdale. You might be wondering, sure, it could take a hit or two, but it wasn't that bulky, and it didn't have reliable recovery, so what gives? What gives is the incredible blessing it received in the form of Strength Sap, which restored health equal to the target's attack stat, meaning it very often got Victreebel back up to full, while dropping said target's attack stat. This made Victreebel one of the toughest cookies to crack in all of PU, and it didn't even have to run defensive investment to do it effectively, allowing it to focus on its offenses. Speaking of its offenses, its special set was incredibly tough to switch into, with its power and coverage. Hidden Power Fire trucked right through a Lowland Sandslash that thought it could shrug off its stabs. And Victreebel loved the additions of Z Crystals. Not only did they come with the defensive benefit of allowing it to easily absorb Girder's knockoff, they gave Victreebel quite a flexible boost. Gracium Z powered up its Leaf Storm without the drawback of dropped special attack, allowing it to spam grass moves on consecutive turns without being taken advantage of. Victreebel's Swords Dance sets were also excellent, and while they faltered against Ferroseed and a Lowland Sandslash, they came with the huge benefit of a physical Bloom Doom that lured in and absolutely crushed the tier-dominating Assault Vest Electros, as well as shattering unsuspecting Cryogonal and Audino as well. Overall, Victreebel was an absolutely terrific Pokemon in Gen 7 PU, becoming a flexible offensive threat with unique, solid defensive use, as it was now so much more than simply a good Sun abuser. And that's it. So how good was Victreebel actually? Well, it's fluctuated between a lot of different tiers, going on a downwards trend throughout the generations as most Pokemon do, though it did start out as a genuine OU. But it's rarely just existed in whatever metagame it's wound up calling home. It always had some sort of forceful impact on them. Even in Oraz NU, where it saw its lowest usage, it was still potentially devastating on the occasion it did show up. As for Sword and Shield, it hasn't been released yet, but perhaps it probably will since it's a Gen 1 Pokemon after all. And once it does, it's almost certain to rip up a lower tier once again. Thanks for watching, everyone. And as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And in the comments, I want to know, what do you think about competitive Victreebel? How would you upgrade it to make it not NU? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. Also, thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos. And thank you to everyone else watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.